Excuse the hot sweaty me, the yellow and red paint making orange, and the unraveling wire, unrolling wire, not unraveling, were previews for this. I have built a extension to the chicken coop because the new coop version 2.0 is too small for the chickens we have in there now. It was fine when I built it, but now we have more chickens. So this is chicken coop version 2.1, I guess. It's not a full version up, it's just an upgrade. And I've made a whole making video in time lapse. Please enjoy.
The process began with me taking out my chainsaw and trimming down the cherry tree and my hibiscus mutabilis. We had discussed removing the cherry tree completely since it never gives us any cherries, but leaving it in gives the chickens somewhere to shade under and climb on if they want to, so it gets to live. Next, I laid out the cinder blocks to figure out where I would have to dig the trench to put in the foundations. This time I didn't have to buy any cinder blocks because I had a few left over, and there was a building being torn down in the middle of town, and when I asked, do you need any of these old cinder blocks that you've ripped up? They said, take as many as you want. I took all the good ones. They even helped me load them in the car. I didn't pay close enough attention to the charge level in the battery I used to keep my camera running, so I don't have some footage, like digging the foundation trench. I do have video of Duncan helping me to compact the rubble in the trench, and then Duncan and I leveling out the cinder blocks to make the foundation as straight and level as we could, within reason. Once the foundation was as straight and level as we were going to get it, it was time to start mixing up concrete and securing them together, with a few stakes in the ground like last time as anchors. Again, I don't think I have any video of me cutting the rebar or driving it into the ground and cementing those up, but you do get to see my handy bamboo tamping stick. It's quite useful actually. Kinda wish I'd had a cement mixer, even though it's only a small project. All the hand mixing managed to give me tennis elbow, even though I don't play tennis. Does that make it cement elbow or mixer's elbow? Next was cementing in the bolts that will secure the frame to the foundation. I went with a few less this time because the frame is going to be very open. There's not a lot for wind to blow on, so I thought I could get away with a few less anchor bolts. Then Duncan and I filled in all the rest of the holes in the cinder blocks with cement, partly to make the foundations heavier, but also to make sure there wasn't anywhere for water to collect. Before I could start putting up the wooden frame, I used some leftover pieces of siding to fill in the gap that otherwise would have been left at the bottom of the coop. Having square, straight wood would have made things so much easier, but you work with what you got. And what I've got is all round and none of it straight. Which means there will be gaps between the foundation and the wood frame, but we'll take care of that later. I drilled the necessary holes and put on the side pieces of the frame, then lined up the end piece, and then surprised myself with how well I was able to cut 45-degree angles in all the logs to fit it all together. Once the base was all bolted down, it was time to start putting in the uprights. Putting together this whole frame really shouldn't have taken that long, except because it was round wood, I had to spend a lot of time using my grinder or the chainsaw to flatten out spaces to put boards onto, and especially with the diagonals, there was a lot of grinding and adjustment and measuring and cutting and fiddling to get everything to fit together nicely. Again, this process, I could have probably finished it within an hour if I'd had straight flat boards. As it was, it took me a lot longer. So I started with the 4 uprights, putting in lower diagonal braces wherever I could, and then the 4 top beams, making a basic box. Of course, this new section of the coop is also going to need a door for cleaning if nothing else, and I saved some straight flat pieces just for this purpose. I based the size of the frame and the door on the size of the wire mesh I have that I'll be using to cover the chicken coop. I pulled out the chainsaw again to cut flat notches into the round logs of the frame for the flat door frame to fit into, and surprisingly I didn't do a half bad job of making it a good fit. And of course I put in lots of screws from the top and from the bottom to secure that thing within an inch of its life. Does that phrase really work for non-living material? As you can see by the top diagonals already being on in the X, Y, and Z axes, this is another place where I lost footage. The only thing I had left to put on here that I got videotaped was the top center bar and the cross beams that go along the back and side that will be used to secure the wire fencing to. This is where that short I made about mixing paint comes in. We had talked about going with purple, but decided on a nice bright orange. I think just because of the size of cans available of different colors, orange was easier to make, and I quite like how it came out. The camera, of course, failed partway through the first coat, so I only have a little bit of that, but Kai came out and helped me with the second coat, which, as it always does, went a lot faster than the first coat did. Once the paint was all done and dried, it was time to address those gaps between the frame and the foundation. Some of the gaps are big enough that small snakes could get in, which is one of my biggest concerns. So I mixed up a bunch more concrete, mostly with my left arm because the right elbow still hurts from that tennis elbow, mixer's elbow, whatever you want to call it. So I mixed up concrete and filled in all the space between the wood and the foundation on both sides all the way around. The third to last step of the process is the fencing. Duncan helped me to cover the door, and we used probably way more fence staples than is strictly necessary. I do tend to buy up the entire supply of fence staples in the size I use in all the surrounding hardware stores when I get to this point. I still had some fencing material that I got from a student left over from when I built the first part of the chicken coop. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough to do the entire extension. I only had enough to cover the front, the door, and the bottom of the back and side. But I figure along the bottom is the most important place where you want the good tight mesh protecting the coop. Oh, and of course I had enough to cover that one little gap in the original coop that I had never fenced because the chickens were blocked off from accessing the underside of the chicken coop originally. After using up all of the good fencing material, I had to fall back on this green hexagonal chicken wire mesh, which is actually left over from the original chicken coop I built over 10 years ago, I think. I don't trust it as much as the good fencing I used everywhere else, but it did work for 10 years on the other chicken coop, so it should be okay. The second to last job, and possibly the most satisfying part, was hanging the door, putting on the hinges, putting on the latch to hold it closed, and it just really makes the whole thing feel complete. Because, you know, literally, that makes it complete. Almost.
The only thing left to do now is to take out that panel behind, I'm not sure which chicken that was, and they'll be able to go through under the coop and into the new section. I'm not sure if my camera worked taking a video of taking off the cover. I don't think we can come over this side because there's too many bugs underneath. They're going to be there a while cleaning up. I got tired of waiting, so I primed the pump and brought Blackie over. It's good to bring Achan, but he doesn't want to come. Is anyone else going to come over? Come on. Maybe if I sprinkle some corn over here. That'll do it. I didn't have to sprinkle the corn. Someone came over already. Here you go. That's a reward for coming over to the new section. Now, hopefully you guys will... I was going to say stop fighting, but you just proved that wrong. And you've got a tree to be under or climb up in, or as you like. Enjoy! So there is the completed chicken coop. Version 2.0 with 2.1 extension. With the cheap green hexagonal chicken wire covering. I would rather not have used it, but it'll have to do until I can get something better. Or maybe it'll do okay. I don't think anything can climb up and get in there. Anything flying down won't get in there. So these guys should be okay. Hey, Achan, you made it! Good ending to the video.